Hello everyone and welcome to yet another day in this The Clown Decade, the decade where things are only going to get worse before they get better. This video is obviously all about Rory Stewart, and today we will be going through yet another one of Rory Stewart's vibes-based takes. I did a general video on this around Christmas time called Rory Stewart is just the worst because I think he's a pretty terrible political analyst and commentator, to be quite frank. His analysis is very rarely beyond surface level, and when he does give the analysis, it is little more than vibes, the obvious example being he thought Kamala would win because it made him feel good, and then when she lost, he said, well, I guess I was just too optimistic. In other words, he is a self-aggrandised, vibes-based pundit, and one that I think should be ignored, but unfortunately the man fills the O2 Stadium in London. So unfortunately that means he's very popular, and it means that I have to go through his ridiculous takes. Anyway, I'll let him start us off. What are we talking about today, Rory?
Trump basically is trying to create an empire focused on the Americas. That's why he's talking about Canada as a 51st state. That's why he's talking about the Panama Canal, and to some extent why he's talking about Greenland.
Yes, Trump is quite clearly trying to consolidate American power, acting very much more like the British Empire did, where he's just openly saying, I want to own this land and these assets. Because at the end of the day, it appears that the Trump administration understands that, well, China and Russia are, well, Russia much more blatantly, but China, over in Africa are trying to do the same thing. And I hope he goes into it, but effectively he's using America's economic power to actually, well, effectively get what he wants, which he thinks is in the interests of America and its people. The Canada thing, as far as I'm aware, that's a bit of a meme, but when it comes to Panama Canal and Greenland, he's probably pretty serious on that, especially about Greenland, actually, which is what we're talking about today.
Not that America's necessarily going to invade Canada. It's more that Trump will do his best to make Canada even more economically dependent on the United States and impose ever more aggressive terms against his neighbors. And that the Trump doctrine feels like he's saying, my sphere of influence is the Americas. China's sphere of influence can be its neighbors. Russia's sphere of influence can be Europe.
Well, yeah, and honestly, how is it a bad idea, really? He's keeping over to America. We're obviously dealing with Russia. He's still going to push for NATO countries to have their end of the bargain of increasing their defence spending because, well, he's clearly focusing over on the Americas, including obviously his neighbours and even South America, and making it clear that America is the big player on that continent. As China is the big player over in Asia, and as over in Europe, I wouldn't exactly say it's Russia, but they are certainly trying to make that statement with the war in the Ukraine.
And I'm going to give up on all the ideas that liberals really had since the Second World War, that it makes sense to try to talk about any kind of global order. He's hunkering down and he's saying, we've got the oil, we've got the gas, we've got the rare minerals and resources, particularly if we bring in Canada and Greenland to help us. And really, we just put up the walls and we don't need to worry about the rest of the world. We're sort of a planet apart.
Well, he's interested in getting NATO spending up in Europe, and he has requested that peace talks be made around Russia and Ukraine, so it's not quite as isolationist as he's giving off. But he is quite correct, and this is going to inform the rest of the video, that Trump is indeed going directly against the liberal world order that we've had since World War II, where you have United Nations and you talk through differences rather than have war, whether that be economic or, direct, bombs, planes, and boots on the ground type war. Trump has basically seen that other superpowers, such as China, have been taking that liberal world order for a ride, and it's allowed them to get to a point where they are a superpower when they, well, probably should never have been, given that they are at least on the outside, a communist country. And because he's seen that, and because he is predicting the rise of China is going to cause issues with this liberal world order, he's effectively ignoring it as well, because it's on the decline. He may as well, and it appears that when it comes to voting intentions and actual votes, especially with the last presidential election, generally the population of America are on board with this view. Yes, that does include the popular vote this time around as well. And this is the problem Rory Stewart has. He's never known any other world, and he literally cannot conceive of any other world that doesn't end up with some sort of Holocaust. This is a big problem we have with, some people call it the Boomer Truth regime. I just think it's the fifth wave liberal worldview, which is that it's a very binary choice. Either you do what we say, or you get the Holocaust again. when in reality throughout history, holocausts are relatively rare, and before it was called the Holocaust it was called pogroms, and generally, say in Britain, we've literally not had one since the Jewish Naturalisation Act of 17 something or other. Which, by the way, Parliament didn't even need to pass for Jews in Britain to actually integrate. So, yeah, quite rare over here. Over in Eastern Europe, obviously, it was quite famous for having a few pogroms. Britain had plenty of waves of refugees, of people who suffered from these pogroms coming over and integrating. You know, fish and chips, it's British, but it is true that it came from Jewish refugees. And the point I'm trying to make here is that the world order at that point, you know, 17 to 1800s, was a world of empires, and in the 1800s especially, one where there was only one empire, the British Empire, which was the largest the world has ever seen. Yes, we are a liberal country, but we hardly had a liberal world order where we talk things out. We were in wars all the time. Hell, we didn't exactly try and convince people to not have slaves. We just went out there with the West African Squadron and captured slave ships. And Rory Stewart's here saying, oh, but if you have this, you'll have constant wars and you'll get a Holocaust. And it's just not the case when it comes to history. It was a very specific part of history that is very specifically German. And I do mean that. But anyway, you'll see what I mean. So, Rory Stewart was tweeting just 2 days ago saying Trump is quite different from almost all previous leaders since the early Middle Ages. He does not even pretend with Greenland or Gaza or international aid to be acting for just reasons. The impact of this naked abuse of power will be staggering. I have quite literally no idea why he's saying from the Middle Ages. As mentioned before, we hardly had a liberal world order when Britain was the only empire, and our main reason for going to war with anyone, every time, the justification was simply, no, we actually want that land to further our interests with our empire, which is naked abuse of power, apparently. It doesn't mean we didn't go to, I suppose you could call it war for just reasons, or moral reasons, such as ending slavery, but there's absolutely no doubt that, say, the Crimean War was fought by France and England for little other reason than to stop Russian expansion into old Ottoman territory. You know, we didn't do that because the Ottoman Empire, you know, owned Crimea at the time. We did it because we didn't want Russia to expand and become a bigger power. That was basically all Britain was doing throughout its empire, just trying to stop other empires from growing too much. Hence Napoleon had to be put in his place twice. But this is the thing, it's all vibes-based politics from Rory Stewart. He's saying Middle Ages because he wants you to think, oh, this is just a very out-of-date mindset that can never work. We're bigger than that, effectively. As I say, all vibes-based. Not rooted in reality, and not even rooted in history from what I can tell. He then says his phone call with Denmark about acquiring Greenland is the most striking recent example. No claims or rights or reason, just money and strength. And as someone in the Danish government put it, it was horrendous. He was very firm, it was a cold shower. Before it was hard to take seriously, but I do think it is serious and potentially dangerous. The details of the call are likely to deepen European concerns that Trump's return to power will strain transatlantic ties more than ever, and the US president heaps pressure on allies to give up territory. Trump has stated his second-term musings about potentially taking over Greenland, Panama and even Canada. Well, the Panama Canal, I should specifically say. Many European officials had hoped his comments about seeking control of Greenland for national security were a negotiating ploy to gain more influence over NATO territory. But this is how Trump works. He'll throw out quite a few things. He'll say, oh, he'll never annex Canada. Go for a smaller one like Greenland, take it seriously, and that, well, makes Canada and Panama think, oh, maybe he's serious about taking over us as well. Russia and China are both also jolting for a position in the Arctic, and this is the thing Rory Stewart needs to understand. Trump's position at this point is, I don't want China or Russia becoming the world hegemon because it weakens our position, and that is not good for our people. So if I can get a large foothold in the Arctic, while at the same time having access to more oil, more rare earth minerals, things like that, which when I was doing geology at university, Greenland was brought up pretty much every year whenever we were talking about natural resources because it's quite rich in them. It's just quite hard to get to given it's, you know, covered in ice. But the call with Frederiksen had crushed such hopes, deepening the foreign policy crisis between NATO allies. The intent was very clear. They want it. The Danes are now in crisis mode, said one person briefed on the call. Another said the Danes are utterly freaked out by this. A former Danish official added, it was a very tough conversation. He threatened specific measures against Denmark, such as targeted tariffs. And again, that is something that the Danish are going to be taking very seriously because of the whole Colombia story. So Trump had a load of illegal immigrants put on a plane, ready, set to go for Colombia, and Colombia said, we're not taking them. And so Trump said, okay, here's a whole list of tariffs that you're having, like really harsh ones, 25% on all exports, or imports, I should say, from Colombia. And within the hour, the Colombian government just folded, completely folded. And Trump knows he has this power and is using it. And Rory Stewart says it's an abuse of power. Well, it's only an abuse of power if it's unjustified. I think it's fairly justified to say, take your citizens back from my country who should not be here. Otherwise, yeah, there's going to be trouble. And when it comes to Denmark, well, again, you could see this as an abuse of power because, he has no right to Greenland. Well, this is the thing. He's offering to buy it, from what I understand. He is offering to purchase it for obviously a massive sum of money. And it's obviously up to Denmark to say yes or no. The problem is obviously here, if they say no, Trump is threatening what he did to Colombia. And this is why they're in crisis mode, because Trump is not playing around with the power he knows America has. And the problem with Europe is, because it was so dependent on America for so long, when it came to defence against the USSR and Russia, since the fall of the USSR, there's always been, as I say, this liberal world order of, okay, we'll keep America happy because I suppose we rely on them, but obviously we took that for granted, and Trump saying, well, no more of that, give me Greenland. And again, because of Trump's predictable unpredictability, he's also declined to rule out using military force to take control of the island. He's threatened already to use economic attacks, I suppose, on Denmark to get Greenland, and he's not ruling out just taking it over with pure military force. It won't be particularly difficult. Denmark don't have the army to really sustain taking America off Greenland, but I don't think Trump would do that. I think he wants peace too much with Europe. People really don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to it, but if they do, then they should give it up because we need it for national security, Trump said at a press conference days before taking office. I'm talking about protecting the free world. You have China ships all over the place. You have Russian ships all over the place. We're not letting that happen. Again, putting it in terms of it will be to further protect Europe and the West is a good way to put it. But, well, I suppose this is the thing. It could come down to a deal of Denmark own it and lease it out to America until the China and Russia question are sorted. But, yeah, Trump's going even further to make himself seem serious that, no, I want full control, and then when it looks like they're making concessions, Denmark will think, oh, good deal. And all my analysis there was much better than anything Rory Stewart has said so far, because all Rory Stewart can say is, oh, he's a tyrannical king, don't you know? This is nothing like what we agreed on after World War II. Not really realising that that was all really on mutual beneficial peacetime talks. Well, America was the world hegemon. Well, America's slowly not becoming the world hegemon, and, well, America needs to do something about that. That is why all this is happening. Stewart then goes on to continue his vibes about this. So he says, the replies here from Trump supporters suggest that many feel that, one, there is no moral truth. Again, what does that even mean? Is it immoral for America to buy Greenland? No, not particularly. Is it immoral to impose sanctions on Denmark because they don't go through with a deal? Entirely dependent. Depends how unreasonable they're being. The really funny thing is that Denmark would probably be in a better position if it wasn't in the EU, because the EU is way behind where it should be. Pretty much every country has been, because of all the red tape, regulation, just active refusal to have proper economic growth within EU countries from the EU. Part of the reason we got out of there, but unfortunately everyone since has decided, hey, look at what Europe are doing, we should copy them, making the whole thing bunk. And they'd be in a position to actually say, well, no, you're not taking it. We have a decent military and we have a decent economy without you. Yet they can't say that. Again, the problem here is that for this whole liberal order to work, everyone has been, in the West I should say, has been relying on America to keep world order, world peace. And so they gave them the biggest stick and let them keep the biggest stick. And so when it comes to the point that America are asking for things back to continue that status quo, all of a sudden it's, oh, what about the moral truth? Well, here's the moral truth, Rory. The whole modern world has effectively been, since World War II, stopping communism and keeping America as the almighty power. We allowed that to happen and are now shocked that when America is taken for a ride by all the countries that relied on it for their defence and peace, it's now apparently immoral to do that. I don't really agree with that. All claims of justice are hypocrisy. I don't know what you mean by that. The main reason Greenland has been a Danish colony is because the Norwegian-Danish Empire effectively claimed it when, well, they were an empire. Then when they dissolved into their individual nations, Denmark took most of the colonies. And oddly enough, actually, just having a quick read of the Wikipedia page, America actually defended Greenland from the Nazis because Denmark obviously was annexed by the Nazis. So America actually did Denmark a favour by stationing troops there and defending it from any sort of Nazi occupation. So, I mean, what did they get in return for that? Well, I can't exactly see. But again, claims of justice are hypocrisy. I'm just trying to work out what he means by that. But these first 2 points have just been, I am a good person. That's all he's trying to say there. It's all vibes. He'll say things that make him feel good rather than face uncomfortable truths. That is very much Rory Stewart. Rules and laws are for the weak. I mean, what rules and laws are there between buying a, well, rather large island to be fair, but a rather large island from Denmark? What are the laws and rules of that? You know, what rules is Trump breaking by imposing sanctions if he doesn't do it? I'm not entirely sure, and Rory's not entirely sure either, I'd imagine. He'll just say, oh, it breaks international law, and he'll quickly realise that international law means basically nothing, and has meant nothing to Russia and China for some time. You know, we kept hearing that, oh, it was an illegal occupation by Israel in Gaza. Has anything happened to them? No, of course it hasn't. The strong must triumph. Well, the strongest will triumph, I suppose, is a more accurate way to put that. However, yeah, I would rather America be in a position to be world hegemon than either China or Russia. And then he just says, oh, Nietzsche anyone? As if Nietzsche didn't have points to make. Yeah, Rory doesn't seem to understand that the world is in chaos right now, and when you're in chaos, you know, rules and laws don't exactly apply, and clearly they haven't applied for some time. But Rory can't possibly accept that because it would mean that he has to face uncomfortable truths, and he's incapable of facing uncomfortable truths. Anyway, his last set of tweets was a bit of a thread on all this. So question, when people support Trump's attempts to take Greenland, is it because they think might is right, there are no rules, the strong take what they want? Well, in a way, yes. You got to realise that we're not in a world of America being the hegemon anymore. It's being threatened. And, Rory, you have to work out who would you prefer in charge, China, Russia. I've really got to stop saying Russia. They're really not doing that well in Ukraine. But China or America, or we'll just say Russia as well, just because it helps the example. Which of those three would you rather be the world hegemon? Like, when it comes down to it, even the most rabid dork writer who would go off to fight Russia would probably reveal, with their revealed preference, that they'd rather be in America than in either of those two countries. But then he asks, or is it morally right in terms of a different moral theory, maybe America first? Well, it's a bit of both. Why do we have rules? Because there's someone with a big stick who will beat you if you do not follow the rules. That's why we have this thing called prison. And why is it morally right? Well, because frankly, I see the morality of America, especially with Trump coming in, being remarkably better than that of China. Continue, who are the key people to interview in MAGA who can reflect clearly on the moral theories? Can Trump do literally anything, or is he constrained by the values of his base? I'm trying to get, I guess, Vice President J.D. Vance on. He's probably the best person to ask about it. He'll give you straighter answers than Trump for a start. Failing that, get literally any of his staffers. They'll probably be on board as well. So is he constrained by the values of his base, and by which values, and does that apply to his private moral actions? His base effectively is do whatever is in America's interest that improves our living standards, makes us feel like we are in a stable America, and possibly even world, because let's face it, a lot of Americans think that they're European, well, white Americans think they're Europeans, and really do have this love for the ancestry that, frankly, every time I meet them, they don't really understand the culture of their ancestry, but either way. This is the point, though. Rory is saying this is immoral because it's at odds with his worldview of, oh, we need as much peace as possible, and you can't possibly upset the apple cart by, changing borders or anything like that. We sorted that out after World War II, it's the end of history. Trump and MAGA have realised, well, it's clearly not, because we have strangled ourselves economically. I know they're still doing very well compared to Europe, but the West certainly, as a whole, has strangled itself to the point where now China is a real threat. It's pretty much taken over parts of Africa to the point where Chinese people are basically considered black on official statistics in some countries. And, well, Trump's effectively saying, well, America doesn't really have an empire, but it kind of does. But he's just being a lot more naked about it, because we're at a point where trying to hide behind, oh, we don't really have an empire, isn't working anymore. And now, is it moral to have an empire, or is it not moral to have an empire? Well, it depends what the empire does. Having an empire is kind of neither here nor there. What the empire does is what matters. And, America makes plenty of poor decisions, I'll say, and probably hasn't been moral throughout its time as an empire, although, rather soft-powered focused one. And as I say, this is another issue Rory has. He doesn't like the idea of hard power, because that's what Russia and China do. Well, Russia and China have faced basically no consequences for having naked hard power, so I guess it's good that finally someone practically on our side is showing hard power. Are supporters okay with his finances and family, or do they think accounts of corruption and nepotism are fake news? Or is it kind of a kayfabe in which people believe and disbelieve simultaneously? I don't know what you want me to say. I don't exactly think Kamala or Biden have been great when it comes to stories on that either. This is another thing. Rory Stewart's main issue with Biden pardoning his entire family in advance of any sort of accusations of wrongdoing was basically that, oh, what are you doing? You've just given precedent for Trump to do the same thing. That was his main problem. So, again, it comes across as very faux moralistic when Rory Stewart says things like this, which I know is a deflection, and when it comes down to it, yeah, I don't really care about nepotism. I really do not care about nepotism at all. But when it comes to corruption, yeah, if he's been corrupt, it's bad. What else is there to say? Corruption happens everywhere. If I care about corruption of Trump's family, whatever, I have to care about corruption absolutely everywhere, and I just don't have time for it. I'd rather talk about important issues, such as how do we put a stranglehold on China's growth and Russia's aggression. They're much more important questions, if you ask me. Anyway, he finishes off, and is all of this as radically new as it seems? No. We did it. We did it for centuries. At least in terms of his refusal to make moral or legal arguments for things like the annexation of Greenland. Again, the age of empires. There was basically no moral arguments. It was just, this is our country's self-interest. We're taking this slice of Africa. But the thing is that it is in our interest was in and of itself the moral justification. Obviously, you are going to care more about the British people than the French people, for instance. And what was England's or Britain's big foreign policy at the time of the empire? Don't let other empires grow. Because if they become hegemon, we can't become hegemon, and we want to become hegemon because it, well, one, that vastly improves our living standards, allows us to have the leash on other countries should they want to expand in any particular way, because otherwise they will become the new hegemon, as I say. I've showed the series before, but there is a series on my channel called The Foreign Policy Mistakes of Britain in the 19th century, and genuinely our biggest mistake was allowing America to expand as it did, because it allowed it to become the new world hegemon. And that was our moral thinking at the time. Don't let there be a chance to be another world hegemon. But unfortunately, after 1812, we had such good relations with America that we thought that it would be alright for them to, well, grow. Turns out it was a bit of a mistake. This is all America is doing right now, by the way, stopping other empires from expanding because it's threatening their hegemony. And Rory, you need to address the question, would you rather China or America be the hegemon? If you want America to be the hegemon, unfortunately you're going to get Trumps every now and then. And you need to understand that the age of moralising using the UN as your backup is rapidly coming to an end. The UN have been an absolute joke even since the 90s. Even The Simpsons made jokes about the UN being completely useless back in the good old days. And we're now seeing the result of the UN, well, not succeeding in their mission, not actually having any power. What's the result? Oh, China just grow. Oh, America react to that. That's all we're seeing here. And Rory can't handle it because he doesn't realise that effectively his entire worldview has been a facade to basically make, well, everyone in the West feel comfortable. Oh, we're all doing great in the West. There's going to be peace forever. America's going to protect us should Russia get out of hand, but that's it. But then it turns out that China's actually a massive issue. They become an economic power. Well, they are an economic powerhouse. They become a larger economic powerhouse, though. They're the new hegemon. That's just how it works. You know, as we are sending troops over to Ukraine to train their troops, Chinese troops have been sent to Russia to help train them as well. You know, this is a proxy war. Ukraine and Russia is a proxy war for the West and China. And, well, you'll never get that sort of comment being made on the rest is politics, because these are they are just two people, Rory Stewart and Alistair Campbell are just two people that don't understand that. They have a worldview, they try and make everything fit into it, and it makes them very uncritical people, especially of themselves. And it needs to be constantly called out, otherwise we're just going to end up having a population of people who are, well, very passive about what's going on around them. When in reality, the world's in a bit of chaos right now. And a lot of people want to stick their head in the sand, and saying, oh, is it moral to take Greenland, though, is a kind of moralising sticking your head in the sand by Stewart. And it probably needs to stop. Oh, and by the way, on a technicality from some treaty signed 100 years ago, the UK actually gets first dibs on buying Greenland. I've not even entertained that this video, really, because I know nothing's going to come of it from Keir Starmer, but if Reform were in, or if the Tories were in, they should absolutely have done the funniest thing ever and bought it and then leased it to America. Because Trump would have a quite hard time trying to upset that special relationship, given he loves Britain so much, given his mother or grandmother, can't remember which, was Scottish. Anyway, I think that's everything I had for you for today. So shill time, it is Tosh News Tonight, it's a newscast over on the Worcester Club. Do go check us out over there. Thursday I'm on Proper Horror Shows channel for a quiz on horror films. Do go give that a look if you're interested. And finally on Friday it is Laughing at the Guardian with some whamming, so do come to that as well if you are about for a laugh. Do subscribe, leave a comment, leave a like, they're really good ways to help with the algorithm. If you think I deserve more, you can become a member for £2 a month, gives you access to my entire backlog of Laughing at the Guardian with some whamming if you're interested, or you can just donate with a super chat or super thanks in any video or live stream. That's really good ways to help the channel as well. But with that, that's everything I had for you for today. So once again, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.